Hello and welcome to our next panel debate, sustainability on the factory floor. China and Germany have both mandated that manufacturers should reduce their energy consumption by 20%, and other countries are looking to follow suit. How do we deal with that? What are the options for manufacturers? Our panel are going to discuss this today. I'm joined by Stan Farnsworth from PulseForge, who's on the extreme left here. Next to him, we have Clemens Jargon from Mycronic. Welcome, Clemens. And joining us remotely today, we have Richard Boyle from the UK, from Henkel. Nice to see you, Richard. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'll get right in with my first question, which is, how would you characterize sustainable manufacturing? And we'll start with you, Clemens.
Thanks, Johan. Trevor, hi all. I think it's a good question how to characterize it. So I would say, I think trying to do it as an overall description, we need to meet today's needs without compromising on the demand of the future. Mm-hmm. We all think that, and we all see that sustainability is a very important trend going forward. Customers demand, suppliers demand, and I think we also have an environmental responsibility. And this stays in the present and it goes also into the future. And we also think it's not only about energy waste, it's also about diversity, it's about inclusion, it's about responsibility for society. And we need to take that even stronger into our corporate responsibility than we've ever done that before.
Right. I think, even extends to supply chain, I think. I mean, reduce the carbon footprint of shipping things halfway across the world when we don't need to.
Exactly, you're completely right.
Stan, have you got a view on this? How you would characterize sustainability? Any changes to what we said?
Yeah, sure. So I think in manufacturing, in particular, sustainability has a lot of implications. First and foremost, we think about energy utilization and greenhouse gas generation resulting from energy utilization. And so we think about, in the EMS process flow, we think about stages in the manufacturing process that are energy intensive, mm-hmm. and we can target those to prioritize a reduction in energy consumption and a reduction in resulting greenhouse gas generation. But I think sustainable manufacturing also has other implications in materials utilization, water utilization. I think there are implications related to the manufacturing process itself. We can think about the growing role of additive manufacturing and the opportunities additive manufacturing provides for more efficient manufacturing versus subtractive manufacturing as well, and chemical waste related to this. So I think that there are a number of aspects that are relevant to us right now for this. Yeah. And I think Clemens' point is exactly right. The challenge is to find sustainable practices without giving up performance, without giving up cost. And that's really where collectively there's an opportunity for the ecosystem to demonstrate innovation and collaboration to achieve these really important objectives.
Yeah, and there's definitely signs of that happening in the industry. Richard, you work for a German company, essentially, what and a materials company to boot. So what is your view on how would you characterize sustainability?
I think everyone's kind of covered most of the key points. There are obviously some other things we can look at. So we should be looking at trying to recycle, reuse, end of life use of the materials that we're buying and using as well to ensure that we can break them down and reuse them in the next generation of products that we produce. That way we have the ability to have a more circular economy and a better way of using up as much of the material that we have available fully. It's unsustainable to continually use fresh materials, fresh resources, and just keep adding. We need to reduce that carbon footprint of materials going to the customer and what the customer then does with those products going on to their customers.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, carrying forward from that point about the reducing the carbon footprint, I mean, do you think that sustainability is going to be an added driver for regionalization in the industry. I mean, we've had a little bit of it happening, partly because of the tariff wars and that sort of thing. But do you think sustainability is going to be another lever to want to make companies look at having a more regional approach to manufacturing? Clemens?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because regionalization is something what follows us, I think, almost daily right now. There's reshoring. I think just due to COVID and all the consequences, I think people really think about what can I do really to get production back into my region. And I think this helps from a sustainability perspective, because that there's less transportation, there's lesser shipping. That means we're really saving energy, we're saving fuel. And this is a big advantage. It's not the only driver for regionalization, but it's one of the drivers. And I think this is helpful for us. And I think everything what happened the last 2 years made them rethinking for companies, for people. And this is an advantage, and that's an opportunity for us. And I believe that, as I said, it's one important driver, not the only one, but this is something we always recognize.
Yeah. Do you have any views on that, Stan?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I think that there's a convergence of a lot of factors here, world factors that exactly are highlighting opportunities for increased regionalization in this. For these things tend to happen in cycles. We've gone through the ship everything overseas, offshoring. We've gone through a whole cycle related to that. We've learned a lot from that. And in an ideal case, there are advantages to that. But what we're finding is that as supply chains become more complex, shipping times grow. I was just reading in The Economist that the average shipping time now from China to the U.S. is 114 days, and in 2019 or 2018, I'm forgetting the exact time, it was 50 days.
Right.
And we don't see a lot of change in that on the horizon because of the factors that are driving that. So I think that is a great and compelling factor for looking at regionalization, along with reduced transportation costs directly to a facility, inventory planning. We're seeing limitations now in just-in-time factory planning, which becomes almost too optimized of a manufacturing system. So I think that relooking at supply chain dynamics, putting in a filter with sustainability, collective carbon footprint across that. And when we think about a collective carbon footprint, that starts to increase then the relationship between sustainable manufacturing and supply chain, but also design. I think it's difficult to have a sustainable manufacturing discussion without talking about sustainable design, designing products with materials that can readily be recycled and value extracted, and then also the downstream recycle recovery piece as well. I think that if we think of these as a connected system, because they are, then that will help us be more effective in reaching our goals for this process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Richard, I agree with everything that's been said by Clemens and Stan. But I mean, one of the issues that's a roadblock for regionalization, of course, is they're talking about bringing chip manufacturing back to the United States and parts of Europe. But you've got to bring the rest of the infrastructure back as well. Otherwise, there's no point. It's not going to work. So, what kind of short-term gains can we make to make our processes more sustainable today?
Short-term gains are a tricky one to actually to win. You need to have very good planning. If we're talking about shipping times of 100 days, some lifetimes of products don't last 100 days. So you're designing a product to be put to market now. You may not get it from your supplier for 100 days, but then by that point, you've already designed the next generation product. So we need to reduce all of that. Having that regionalized will do that. But as you say, that's not something that can be just dropped in. You've got to have the infrastructure around it. So you can set up a chip plant within the next couple of years, but you need to have the skill set. You need to have everything else that goes with that. And you need to have the logistics to help support that. So it's a massive undertaking to look at that process of moving all of those suppliers, all of those things that create the market that you're looking to do to those regions. So it's got to be joined up thinking not only with the manufacturers, but with all of the suppliers, all of the ancillary products that go with it, to ensure that if we are regionalizing these materials, to reduce that carbon footprint, to reduce the shipping times, to make the whole process quicker and easier to control, then everything has to move at the same time.
Yeah, very true. Clemens.
Yeah, I think Richard mentioned a lot of things. I think it's about saving energy. It's about fulfilling responsibilities. It's about saving costs for sure. But there's another aspect which I would like to add here. There's a short-term and also mid and long-term gain. It's about employee engagement. So when we do surveys in our employees, I think we recognize, I think that for them it's important to work for a company who takes sustainability seriously.
Yeah.
And when we look into now how our society is changing, I think Generation Z people, I think they're right now approaching already the industries, and they have a certain demand. They have expectations. They know that we need to change the world, and that they want to contribute, and they want to join companies who take that contribution seriously. So, next to saving costs and caring for the environment, it's also about caring for the people in the future who will drive our companies forward.
Right. So responsible manufacturing and management basically is what you're talking about. So we talked about some of the short-term things that we can maybe do to make things more sustainable. What about on the longer term? I mean, on the roadmap. How do you think we should be approaching it, Stan?
Yeah, I think for this we can look to a couple of models in general around innovation rollout, innovation adoption. I think we're going to find that this is following sort of a typical S curve. That the time constant might be a little bit different for rolling out sustainable innovation versus a 100-day product life cycle, right, for innovation here. But I think we wind up thinking about early adopters. We wind up thinking about a maturation stage where it propagates more broadly through an industry. And then hopefully we reach a plateau of sustainable operation. And I think when we think about early adopters, we have early adopters. We have organizations, including in the EMS space here at IPC Apex, that have very specific and public stances on sustainable manufacturing, sustainable electronics. But how do we propagate that through more organizations while still maintaining the performance needs, the business needs, the economic needs of these organizations? And I think for that we need a little bit of help. And I think I think there's a role for associations to play in this. I think there's a role in thinking about what the acceleration factors are that can encourage increased adoption. And making this a more prevalent conversation, both internal with the organizations themselves as an incentive to foster innovation towards a very purposeful set of objectives, but then externally in the ecosystems as well, to create opportunity and drive and thought around purposeful innovation with that as well. I think that's going to wind up being a key to get farther up this propagation, this S curve, to get more utilization and to get to the innovation that I think we'll need in order to get to a successful operating plateau.
Right. Okay. Well, a lot of interesting parts to unpack in that. Richard, I mean, do you think there is a role for trade associations to at least produce some guidelines for sustainability or better sustainable practice within the factory, or do you think it's something that should be encompassed in standards? I
think there's a lot of potential for IPC, SMTA, JEDEC, INEMI. They have already got that group of companies, group of people, group of experts that they can call on to look at best practices, to look at ways of improving, not only from a sustainable point of view, but from an efficiency point of view, how manufacturing can move forward. We're probably looking at this 5 years too late to achieve the goals that most people want to achieve. We should have been looking at sustainable manufacturing years ago to be in a better position now. But that being said, we've got to draw a line in the sand. We've got to move forward. The one thing about the COVID pandemic, about the shortage of components, about the whole thing that's happened over the last couple of years, has really focused people's minds on what's going to happen in the future. And I think the guys are absolutely right as well. Generation Z, people are now looking for jobs that offer more than just work. They want something that makes a difference. They want to work for a company that offers equal rights, that looks after their workforce, that is looking to be producing materials in a way that they can be proud of, that they can support, that they can go home and talk about it to their family and say, we're making the world a better place. I think everyone realizes the timelines to achieve this are quite short. And the more we work together is really the only way that we're going to achieve that. Individual companies working on their own probably won't be able to do everything they need to do. Big organizations, big independent groups, as I said before, the SMTA, IPC, INEMI, those sort of people working together, collaborating, could come up with solutions quite quickly and could help the whole industry move forward to achieve good results quite quickly. But this is going to be something like eating an elephant. It's not something you can do in one go. It's going to be very, very, very small steps. But if everyone does lots of small steps together, the actual end product is we all make a big leap forward. And I think that's really the way that we got to look at this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's going to be an incremental thing. It's not something, as you say, that you can do all at once. You'll do it in small steps, but you'll also keep improving it. It'll be under constant revision going forward. So, Clemens, I mean, if we can do that, sorry, do you want to chip in on whether there is a place for associations to produce guidelines for this?
Yeah, so Richard mentioned it a lot. I think it's about best practice sharing, because on one hand, I think we are all competing in that industry, but on the other hand, we have a common mission. And our customers want us that we have a common mission here. And this means setting standards, measuring against indices. And I think we have done great with CFX and Hermes, I think helping everybody. And something was in for everybody. I think now we're working much better together. We collaborate in a better way to the benefits of customers. And now we have to do the same to the benefits of the environment, to the benefit of society. Yeah? So therefore, as more we share best practices, as more we collaborate and work together, as more it will be appreciated by customers and by the industries.
Right. So if we all in the West do a good job of improving our sustainable and environmental footprint, how do we help the low-cost countries to adopt it?
Interesting. So I think even low-cost countries are aware of their responsibility. We shouldn't say low-cost means no climate awareness. So even low-cost countries have climate goals. Yeah.
So China's going to stop building a new coal-fired plant every week.
Maybe. It's a long-term journey, yeah? And I think we can help them to join that long-term journey, and we have a responsibility to get them into the boat. Yeah? Right. And this is, again, what we said before, setting standards. We talk about Industry 5.0. I think we want to combine in future robots efficiency with the human element again. Yeah, and I think this is also something, this is not only relevant for high-cost countries or advanced countries, this is relevant for all of us. And low-cost countries are continuously important for all of us. If it's China, if it's Southeast Asia, if it's Eastern Europe, if it's Mexico, for the US, I think we need to treat us all as contributors to a better future. And this is not only company's responsibility, this is also industry responsibility. And we need to involve here the low-cost countries.
I think the OEMs, though, who are commissioning the work in these low-cost countries, have to insist that it's manufactured to these sustainable standards, essentially. Really. Stan, you any input on that?
Yeah, I think, Clemens, I keep going back to your first comment. The very first part of the panel, I think you were so spot on with that the challenge is to define the performance and the economics all together. And I think with that as a purposeful challenge, that defines and drives a lot of innovation. If we do this right, the correct and natural and check the boxes implementation will be the sustainable manufacturing technologies. It won't be a compromise of, well, we're going to do it a new way, but have to pay more for it. If we do it right, it's doing it a new way, and it's faster, better, cheaper. That's really the goal. And I think that creates an opportunity for this entire room, for our whole ecosystem, to think progressively and bravely and boldly about not being content with the status quo of our technologies today and not being content with the status quo of our processes today, to learn from that, to recognize best practices, what we know from this, but then to be quite vigilant in looking for innovation that's coming from maybe non-conventional sources, maybe outside of our own ecosystem here, or maybe within our own ecosystem from some of the folks that are coming into the workforce driven by these new sets of performance goals. I think ideally, if we can do this, that will really help the adoption in the low-cost countries, and it will stay in alignment with what really are objectives for the entire planet.
Yeah, there's some truth in that. Going back to my first question or statement about China and Germany demanding a 20% reduction in energy costs, you've got to then look at the significant savings that's also bringing to companies. So there is an upside to it as well. So Richard, last word to you. Do you have any final thoughts on how we could help the low-cost countries to adopt a more sustainable manufacturing footprint?
I think the guys are right. I think if we do it properly, the costs become cheaper and the processes become easier. It will sell itself. You're going to have some legislation there to back it up to encourage everyone to go down the route. But at the end of the day, if you know you can make something better quality, cheaper, more efficiently, then why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Well, gentlemen, I think we're coming to the end of our panel today, and it's been a great debate. I think we've covered some really important topics. So I want to thank Stan Farnsworth from PulseForge, Clemens Jargon from Mycronic, and of course Richard Boyle over there in the UK from Henkel. Nice to see you, gentlemen, and thank you very much to our audience for watching today.